Have you ever wondered why sometimes when you're rooted you can attack and other times you can't? Today we're going to dive into the root mechanic in Dota 2 to learn why this seems to be the case so you know exactly what you can and cannot do the next time you're rooted. What does it mean to be rooted? The base effects of the root mechanic are to stop movement, prevent mobility abilities like anti-mage's blink, and provide true sight over the target, meaning you can see them if they're invisible, with a couple of exceptions that we'll get to later. There are a good amount of abilities in Dota that apply the root effect. I'll put a link to a list of them in the description. The potentially confusing part is how I didn't mention things like roots applying a disarm or stopping channeling abilities. That's because some roots do those things and some don't. So why is that? When a unit is rooted, the effects of root that we mentioned earlier are applied, and any other additional debuffs or effects like disarm are applied as well only if the specific spell happens to also apply it. For example, when a unit is hit by Rod of Atos, they're rooted, applying all of the base root effects. When a unit is frostbitten by Crystal Maiden, which roots, this applies all of the base root effects as well as a disarm, because frostbite disarms the unit. You can even read this in the description of the spell, prohibiting movement and attack. So this disarm effect that frostbite applies doesn't have to do with the root effect at all. The spell just happens to also disarm. The same thing with Treant Protector's ultimate Overgrowth, which I didn't realize until now has a very similar picture as frostbite. Kind of like how Undying's removed grab ally picture is similar to Sven's Stormhammer. Just Valve janitors recycling assets, I guess. No big deal. As you know, Overgrowth roots units and also disarms them. But again, you can think of it as the disarm not being related to the root effect at all. These spells just happen to also disarm the affected unit, making it seem like it's an effect from the root. Crystal Maiden and Treant's Aghanim Scepter upgrades will also apply the disarm to units. The only other root I could find that also applies a disarm is Nature's Prophet's Aghanim Scepter upgrade. It doesn't explicitly say that it prevents attacking like Frostbite does, but it does say it entangles enemies, which is how disarming roots were formerly described. There are also some abilities that apply a root on the caster or ally target to prevent them from performing certain actions like moving or attacking. Some of these include Earth Spirit's Rolling Boulder, not letting you blink while you're rolling, and Centaur's Hitch a Ride, preventing your ally from using mobility abilities, since they're technically rooted. The list of these abilities is short, but be sure not to grief your teammates or yourself with one of them. Now let's talk about which abilities are disabled by the root mechanic. As mentioned earlier, roots prevent mobility abilities. This includes things like Mirana's Leap, Quap's Blink, Storm Spirit's Ball Lightning. There's a large list of them which I'll also link in the description, so go check them out if you're interested. But pretty much most abilities that move the unit are disabled, with some exceptions. Although this doesn't include Force Staff, you can still use that on a rooted unit. You'll also notice in the list that TP Scroll is considered a mobility ability, which is why roots will stop a TP. You probably already knew that though. What you might not know is something about Treant Protector's ultimate, Overgrowth. This spell is special because it also applies a stop command along with the disarm and the standard root effects, meaning it'll stop an ability from being channeled. This is why Treant Protector on paper is a great counter to Enigma, because Overgrowth will stop Black Hole, even through BKB. Same with stopping Dawnbreaker's Solar Guardian. Now don't get it confused that any root will stop a channeling ability like Black Hole or Solar Guardian, because most roots don't apply a stop command like Overgrowth does. In fact, I couldn't find any roots that do besides Overgrowth, so if you know of any that I missed, be sure to let all of us know in the comments. I just wanted to point this distinction out about Overgrowth so you don't go thinking that all roots have the same power and effect on units, although it might seem like the case. Overgrowth, like Frostbite, apply the root effects, but also just happen to apply other effects as well. I mean, Overgrowth is Treant's ultimate, so it makes sense that it's stronger and does more. But hey, I'll let you in on a little secret. Since Crownfall didn't include any gameplay changes like a lot of us expected, this trick might still be in the game. If you like this video and subscribe right now, like right now, any root you apply in your next game will fully disable the enemy and even turn them into a chicken. Try it out yourself if you don't believe me. Now for an inconsistency that I truthfully couldn't find a reason for. So again, if you know the answer, enlighten all of us in the comments so we can all be better and smarter players. Earlier I mentioned that one of the base effects of the root mechanic is to give true sight over a unit, meaning you can see them when they're invisible for the duration of the root. And although this is for the most part true, there are two sources of root that I could find in the whole game that don't give true sight of the unit for the duration of the root. Beastmaster's Call of the Wild Hawks, which apply a short root on the unit they dive bomb onto, and Void Spirit's level 25 talent, which gives Dissimulate a 2-second root on the units it hits. If a unit is rooted by these spells, then goes invis, they will be out of sight. All other sources of root that I tested do give true sight over the unit for the duration of the root. Now, why these two spells don't, I'm honestly not quite sure. They still apply the effects of root just like any other rooting spells. They just don't give true sight for the root duration. If you happen to go explore this topic on your own, you might find yourself on the Dota 2 fandom wiki, which has a lot of great information but is often not always up to date and correct. The maintainers of this wiki have recently migrated to Liquipedia, which is extremely exciting, but things aren't fully elaborated on quite yet on many of the pages. My point is, on the wiki, there's a section on the root mechanic page which talks about conditional true sight, which basically says a root will give true sight over the unit if the root is not applied while the unit is fading into invisibility. Simple testing shows that this conditional true sight it has defined, along with the example it gives, is not correct. Regardless of whether a unit is rooted before they cast an invisibility or while they're fading into invis, they'll have true sight applied to them for the duration of the root. It also makes a point about fade time versus fade delay. Fade time is the small window of time while a unit is transitioning from being visible to invisible. This would be something like Bounty Hunter's Shadow Walk or an Invis rune. Fade delay is the same thing, but for abilities that reapply the invisibility effect if it's broken. This is something like a Glimmer Cape or Murana's Moonlight Shadow. Regardless of the ability having a fade time or fade delay, they'll have the true sight over them if they're rooted, besides the two exceptions that I pointed out earlier. Maybe a misunderstanding by me, or just a classic inconsistency in Dota that we need to learn to live with. Now I'll quickly go through all of the sources of root that I found that provide true sight over a unit that is already invis. Broodmother's Aghanim Scepter upgrade, Spinner's Snare, Gleipnir, or however you pronounce it, Meepo's Earthbind, Crystal Maiden's Aghanim Scepter upgrade, Oracle's Fortune's End, Underlord's Pit of Malice, and Dark Willow's Bramble Maze. If I missed any, as always, let us know in the comments. Hey, I've been streaming a lot more recently and I absolutely love when I get some of you to come by and say hi, so be sure to do that. And if I'm not live when you pop in, be sure to follow me on Twitch so you can catch me next time I'm live. I'm streaming my ranked Immortal support games and having a lot of fun with it on my new road to 9k. I talked more about my success and learnings from my recent grind from 7.1k to 8k in this video here. I got a lot of really nice comments about the tips I gave, so go check that out. We recently hit 22k subs here on YouTube, so I just wanted to quickly say thank you so much for all of the support. And if you're watching until this point, a very special thank you for being a real one. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope you learned something new with me.